stand by. Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's Data Collection and Reporting Conference. Just as a reminder, today's call is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Ms. Whitney Marsland. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second presentation in a series of webinars offered over the next several weeks for new CED and CED HSFI grantees. I'm Whitney Marsland from ICF and am joined here today by Andrew Cawley from the Office of Community Services. Today's webinar, Data Collection and Reporting, will be providing you with the information you need to get started collecting the data for your project. Starting to collect data right at the beginning of your grant will make submitting your performance progress report, which we call the PPR, much easier. And then later on in the spring, we'll provide some more guidance about submitting your PPR in the online system that we call OLDC. This will include guidance for getting your username and password, using the system, and steps for submitting your report. So this webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to access the full webinar on the CED page of the OCS website. And we'll provide information where you can access these materials in an email following the presentation. We'll also be taking questions at the end of this presentation. So now I will turn it over to Andrew to get us started.
Thanks, Whitney. First of all, welcome to all the new 2015 grantees, as well as people who may have had CED grants before, but also received a 2015 award. So today we're going to talk a little bit about data collection. We're going to go into the forms that are needed to fill out the performance progress reports, which we will henceforth be calling PPRs. And we'll introduce you to a tool that will help you get started right away with tracking some of the information you're going to need to fill out for your PPRs semi-annually. Our agenda today is basically going to cover just a general overview of the data collection process, an introduction to the data collection tool. Then we're going to discuss additional data collection resources and technical assistance that's available to you. And then we're going to have a little Q&A at the end. So why is data collection important? Basically, grantees are expected to track data on jobs and businesses throughout the course of their projects, and you're going to report progress through the PPR, Performance Progress Report, and it's due semi-annually, and it's submitted through a system called the Online Data Collection System, or OLDC. We like to use a lot of acronyms around here. So the reason data collection is important is because it provides the opportunity for both program-level monitoring and analysis, as well as grantee-level monitoring. It also allows grantees to track their own progress over the course of the grant and make sure that they complete the goals that were set out in their application. So for program-level monitoring and analysis, the data that's collected helps us, as the Office of Community Services, provide Congress with quantitative and qualitative evidence demonstrating how valuable our program is. It helps us identify areas where grantees aren't necessarily as successful as some other areas, and it also contributes to future decisions on what types of projects we target and what types of projects maybe aren't the best to go after. So that's the program level monitoring. The grantee level monitoring, the data helps keep all of our program specialists informed about grantee accomplishments as well as their challenges. And it also helps program specialists identify any kind of support needs that a grantee has, which we can definitely offer some technical assistance to help with once those are identified. So thank you very much for attending this. Hopefully it'll be useful for you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Whitney, who's actually going to go through it. So, thanks, Whitney.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. So as Andrew just mentioned, you are required to use OLDC to submit semi-annual reporting forms, which we call PPRs. So as a new 2015 CED grantee, you'll first need to gain access to OLDC in order to submit the first report. So the project contacts and authorizing officials of your grants will receive this information in an email, and you'll receive this information in the upcoming weeks. But today's webinar is going to focus on collecting the data for the PPR. We'll be giving further guidance on how to obtain access and how to use the OLDC system to submit the PPR closer to the first time that you're required to report, which will be in April. The PPR includes 3 forms, and today's webinar is going to focus on Form A. It's the most involved of all 3, and it deals with the quantitative data about what you've accomplished so far, so like how many businesses you've created or how many jobs you're creating. The second form is Form B, and that asks for some narrative about the various elements of your project. And then the third form is Form E, which deals with some financial data. But Form A specifically asks for data about businesses and jobs created to employ low-income individuals. And there is one additional piece of data that you will collect that's related to all jobs that's created for both low-income and non-low-income people. And so we'll get into more detail about that in this presentation and in future webinars, but we just wanted to bring that to your attention up front. So what you see on your screen here is the timeline for the PPR. We've mentioned this before, but the PPR is submitted twice a year, so you should remember to submit in April and October. And you'll see on your screen here some upcoming reporting periods and important due dates. So even though the first time you report won't be until April, we're providing information about the data collection tool now so that you can begin using it right away to track the progress of your grant and start collecting data. Starting this process now will make it much easier for you once April does roll around. You can have all of your data together now, and it'll just make submitting a lot easier. So the PPR is a bit complex, and some things can be a little bit difficult to understand. So we've developed the data collection tool to make reporting throughout your grant a lot easier. The data collection tool is an Excel-based tool that was designed to make it easy for any grantee to collect all the data that they would need to fill out Form A of the PPR. So the purpose of the tool is to do a couple of things. First, it just kind of clarifies exactly what information you need to be collecting, and it calculates all the information for you that's needed for Form A. So as long as you track the necessary information in the tool, you'll ensure that you have accurate numbers to plug into the PPR in the online system, and you'll have a record of what you've submitted in an Excel document. The data collection tool and using it is not mandatory, and it's after you fill it out, you still need to actually log into OLDC and submit the data there. And just filling out the tool in Excel doesn't automatically submit it for you in the system. But if you use the tool, you'll just be entering the numbers it calculates into the online system instead of having to calculate them yourself using a different method. So also, like we've mentioned, this data collection tool only deals with Form A. You'll still need to fill out Forms B and E inside OLDC. But again, we will go over entering your data into the PPR in OLDC closer to April when you'll be reporting for the first time. The data collection tool only calculates data for low-income individuals. So I mentioned that earlier. And there's only one indicator in the PPR that asks for information on non-low-income individuals, but the entire data collection tool just calculates the information on low-income individuals. You can download the data collection tool. Like I said, it's an Excel document, and it's located on the PPR Information Page of the CED website, and it's that URL you see on your screen there. Also on that page is an instruction guide for using the tool and a quick tip document that you can refer to while you're using it. When the recording of today's webinar becomes available, it'll be posted to that page as well, so you can refer to it as you're using the tool. So we recommend going to this web page, downloading the document, and saving it on your computer so you have it available for each reporting period. You will use the same Excel file for your whole grant, so you don't need to use multiple tools for the different reporting periods. You'll be using the same Excel document. So the reason that we're bringing the data collection tool to your attention so early is because it has many benefits. It will really simplify filling out Form A because it does all the calculations for you. And the indicators on Form A may be a bit abstract, so it kind of breaks down the indicators into information that you will actually be collecting, so it makes it easier to report on. Keeping up the data collection tool throughout the course of your grant also reduces the time it takes to fill out Form A, because you'll just kind of be using it once the PPR is due to enter the information that you've been collecting. It also allows you to kind of have a record of where your grant is at and all your past reports that you've submitted just on your computer. And it allows you to track data as you go, rather than having to pick up at the end of the reporting period and try and make sense of your last report and remembering what was captioned and what wasn't. So as long as you're using this tool to update your records on a regular basis, submitting the semi-annual report could be as simple as just taking the summary information from the tool and plugging it into the online system. And this can it's helpful because it does the calculations for you, but it also kind of frees up your time so you can think more about telling the story of your grant in Form B, where you can kind of include more narrative and more qualitative information. So there are 5 components of your program that you'll be tracking in the PPR. They are the businesses that you're creating or expanding, the positions created, the employees in these positions, funds leveraged, and program income. So I mentioned this earlier, but the PPR collects data specific to low-income individuals for all indicators except for one. This indicator is only in the online version of Form A in OLDC, and it asks for the total number of jobs that you've created for both low-income and non-low-income individuals. And this is the only piece of information for Form A of the PPR that will need to be calculated outside the data collection tool. So the data collection tool only calculates information for low-income people, and there's one indicator in Form A that asks for information about non-low-income individuals. So you should be collecting data related to low-income individuals in the data collection tool, and that one piece of data that includes non-low-income individuals you'll just have to keep track of in a different tool or a different method. And we'll talk about that difference a little bit later in today's presentation. So for collecting this information, this pyramid that you see on your screen kind of illustrates the structure of the businesses, positions, and employees information that you will track. So you should remember that you need a business in order to have positions, and you need positions to have employees. So basically what this means is businesses don't count until you have at least one employee in the business. And positions don't count until someone is actually working in them, and you can't have positions until you have at least one business. And employees have to be in the positions that you're creating. So if you're ever a little bit confused about how to enter some information in the data collection tool, it's helpful to kind of refer to this image to figure out when something is considered a business and when it is considered a position. So for each of these three sets of indicators, you'll be asked to specify a lot of certain characteristics for them in the PPR. So for example, the PPR specifies how many of the jobs created were created at least 6 months ago. And the data collection tool allows you to provide this information in the Excel document, and then the data collection tool will calculate this for you. So it just makes it a lot easier to track this information. So you'll have to input some specific characteristics about each of these three indicators. So for businesses, you'll indicate whether a business is new or whether you expanded a business with your grant. And you need to know when the business opened and if it closed, if that applies. And that way it kind of tells your program specialist through the PPR how long the business was in operation. For positions, just like the business indicators, you need to know when positions were created and if applicable to that position when it ended, just so you can track the sustainability of the positions you're creating. You'll also input some information about different types of business benefits that may be associated with that position and whether it's full-time or part-time. And remember, the positions you enter in the data collection tool should all be low-income positions. For the employees indicators, you're looking at the individuals who are filling the positions that you create. So we'll want to know some specific characteristics of the employees, like if they're a TANF recipient, if they qualify as low income, if they've received job training through OCS, if they got a raise or promotion, and how much their starting hourly wage was and how long they've worked there. So before we kind of get in the step-by-step of the data collection tool and how you can use it, there are a few things that we want to point out before we get into the details. So first is you'll want to enable macros on the data collection tool or it won't work. And you'll get a little message when you open the file that will allow you to do this. You'll also want to fill out all the information that it asks for because the calculations are only going to be as good as the data that you put in to the data collection tool. It's also a protected document, which means that you can't really edit the fields or the formulas because it's intended to only let you enter information that you should be entering. So if you think that a calculation is incorrect or something doesn't look right, rather than trying to unprotect it and fix it yourself, we recommend that you contact us at OCS Registrar and we can take a look and see what's going on. You also need to use a version of Excel 2007 or later, or you'll need to install a compatibility pack from Microsoft's website if you have an older version. You cannot open it with Office 2003. And the last kind of piece of advice we have is to save your work often when using the data collection tool, just like any other document that you're working in. It is time-consuming to put this information in, so it's important to save, especially as you enter more information and the document gets bigger. We recommend saving your work very often. There are also some safeguards built into the spreadsheet, and this is why it's a protected document to kind of ensure that everything you enter makes sense. So you'll get kind of two types of messages as you enter your data. One is an error message, it's the stop error. So that means if an information that you entered into a cell is invalid, Excel won't let you proceed with it. And the other is a warning, which kind of brings to your attention if there might be an issue with the data that you entered in the cell, and Excel will let you enter it, but you'll have to, you'll get a little message that says that there's a warning, and you'll have to click OK to proceed with it. Many of these validations are pretty obvious. So, for example, for businesses, you won't be able to enter a close date that comes before the open date of a business. And for employees and positions, you won't be able to have employees start in a position before that position was created. So these kind of sound like common sense issues, and they are, and they're just designed as checks and balances to avoid data entry mistakes and other things that can get a little bit confusing as you're entering in all these data. So now we'll kind of walk through each of the tabs of the data collection tool, and there are 8 tabs that you'll use in the Excel workbook. They are designed in a particular order, so you'll start in the businesses tab because you need to have positions, you need to have businesses to have positions, and you need to have positions to have employees. So now we'll go through each of the tabs. The first is the Start tab, and it just contains some basic information reminding you what the tabs are and how to use the tool. So as you see in your screen, you won't have to enter any information in this tab. It's just kind of some reference materials. So the first tab that you'll actually enter in some information is tab 2, which has to do with the businesses that you're creating and expanding. So you'll need to specify whether each of the businesses that you're creating with your grant funds were created or expanded. And if you're wondering which businesses you include here, you'll first think about what jobs you are saying that you created with OCS funds. So all of these jobs had to be part of a business, and you need to make sure that all businesses are listed in this tab. So that means if you're providing a loan or helping a new business open in a mall, for example, you need to set up an agreement with your project partners to ensure that in exchange for the funding you're providing them, you get the necessary information that you need in order to track this data. So if you're giving a loan to a business, you need to work out in your agreement that that business will provide you with the positions and job data that you need to enter into the PPR. And for those of you that are working with micro enterprises or any self-employment kind of businesses, each of the micro enterprises should be considered a separate business. And for revolving loan funds, any business that you helped to create through a revolving loan fund should be counted as a business created. And any existing businesses that used funds from a revolving loan fund to expand should be counted as a business expanded. So again, this is what the business tab looks like, what you see on your screen. So in the first column, you will just enter the name of the business. Then you will enter whether it is a new business or an established business that is being expanded. So this helps OCS because they want to know when you have helped create a brand new business and when you have helped an existing business expand the number of employees. So you'll also enter the date that the business opened or expanded. And that doesn't necessarily mean the day it opened to the public, as it should be before or on the day the first employee started working. So in the case of expanding an existing business, this date should be the first day that an employee hired through OCS funds worked at the business. And the close date, which is the last column you see, should only be entered when a business is no longer open or doesn't have any more employees. If a business is still open, you can just leave this column blank. Next is the Positions tab, and this is where you will keep track of all the positions you create. So for this tab, you'll need to know the title of the position, the business that it is associated with, the date it was created, the date it ended only if it does end, and any benefits associated with the position and whether or not it was full-time or part-time. And another reminder that all the positions you input into the data collection tool for this tab should be for low-income individuals. So the data that you enter in this tab helps OCS understand a count of how many positions were created, and it will also tell OCS how long these positions lasted in the community. So the first shows that you're creating the number of positions that you set out to create, and the second shows that the positions you're creating are sustainable in the community. It is important to remember that the same position might be held by a number of different individuals over time. So it would be great if each position you created was filled by one individual over the life of the grant, but the reality is that people will cycle in and out of positions after a while, so you'll need to make sure that you ensure you record that in the data collection tool. So the first column here, you will enter the name of the position. So to ensure that you can differentiate between similar positions, we recommend that for positions with the same title and the same business, you add a letter to the end. So, for example, if your grant opens a store, you could enter Sales Clerk A, Sales Clerk B, and Sales Clerk C to kind of differentiate between, it might be the same position, but you might have a number of positions open. We recommend using letters as opposed to numbers, since numbers sometimes refer to different steps or grades that kind of designate the higher level position. So Sales Clerk 1 and Sales Clerk 2 might have different responsibilities and job descriptions. So if you need to differentiate between the same position, we might recommend using letters. You'll also want to differentiate between similar businesses that are in different businesses. So, for example, if you have two restaurants, you're going to have waiters at both restaurants. So you want to be sure that the person being hired is attributed to the right position at the right restaurant. So you could have Applebee's waiter A and diner waiter A. So it's the same position but in two separate businesses. So you'll want to include that that level of detail when you're naming the positions, because knowing which position is which will be really important once you get into the employee tab, and it just helps over time as you get more positions and more employees. Just makes it easier to keep track. So in the second column, there is a drop-down menu that contains the name of all the businesses that you entered in the previous tab. So you can select which business that position is associated with, and then it'll keep auto-populating throughout the rest of the tabs in the data collection tool. So remember that all positions must be associated with the business. So in the next two columns, you'll enter the creation date and end date of the position, and if the position has not ended, you can just leave that column blank. And you'll be able to use the checkboxes in the next few columns to indicate which benefits, if any, are associated with that position. And in the last column is another drop-down box where you can determine the status of the position, so whether it's full-time or part-time. And all but one of the indicators on the PPR are related to full-time jobs. So there's only one question in the PPR that asks for the number of part-time jobs created with your grant. It's also important to remember that not every new hire is a new position. So if an employee leaves and is replaced, that could be the same position. And it's just a new employee. So we'll talk about that and how to record that when we get into the next tab. So we encounter a lot of questions about the positions tab. So we've kind of collected a lot of those frequently asked questions that we can go over now. So a very common question that we get is, how do I track promotions that lead to new positions? So if a person is being promoted but is not being replaced, so if they're getting a title promotion, then you should replace the position name in the Positions tab. You don't need to do anything in the Employees tab because that will self-update. But if the person being promoted is replaced, like an assistant manager who's becoming a manager, and then the business is going to hire a new assistant manager, Then you will change the position title in the drop-down box in the Employees tab. So you will add the new employee into the Employees tab, select the existing position from the drop-down box. This is really important because it allows you to get credit for retaining the employee and keeping the position. So you want to be careful about how you're entering in information like this in the data collection tool. And if you're ever not sure about whether to update something in the Positions tab or in the Employees tab, you can contact us at the OCS registrar. Another common question we get is how to account for full-time positions that become part-time positions and vice versa. So if you have a part-time position that becomes a full-time position, you'll track this in the Positions tab. In that drop-down field that we just went over, you'll change the status from part-time to full-time. Now, if the inverse occurs and the full-time position turns into a part-time position, you will also make this change in the Positions tab. And you'll do this a little bit differently. This time, you'll create an end date for the full-time position and then create a new part-time position. If the same employee holds the position that went to part-time, in the Employees tab, you'll select the new position you created in the position drop-down. This is important because, remember, we are concerned only with full-time positions and all of the indicators in the PPR other than one, which specifically asks about part-time positions. So the full-time number of cumulative full-time positions can never go down, or you'll get an error in OLDC. So even if a full-time position does go to part-time, it still counts as a full-time job that was created over the course of your grant, even though it has ended. So that's why you have to be particular about how you enter that in the data collection tool. So now we'll go over how you keep track of employees hired into the positions that you helped create. So for this tab, you'll need a unique identifier for each employee. That can be the employee's name. We also recommend using an ID number that you create for that employee. You'll also need to know what position that employee held, their start date, and their end date if that's applicable, whether they were trained with OCS funds, and whether they were a TANF recipient. You'll also need to know whether they qualify as low income. And the employee should always be low income, since that is what the data collection tool is designed to calculate for you. So if you have employees that are non-low income, like I said, you'll want to keep track of those jobs in a method outside the data collection tool. Also remember that anyone who is a TANF recipient should automatically be counted as low income. Otherwise, for CED grants, low income means 125% of the HHS poverty line. You'll also need to know the employee's hour starting wage, whether they received a raise or a promotion. Even if their hourly starting wage changes over time, you should only enter the starting wage for this tab of the data collection tool. Similarly, raises and promotions only need to be documented once. So if you're not sure whether someone qualifies as low income, you can check the HHS poverty guidelines online at the URL in this slide, or you can ask your program specialist. So as you fill out the Employees tab, it's important to note that all active employees should be associated with a unique position. So if someone leaves a job, they can replace, and you should record it there. And like I said before, not every new hire is a new position. So if you ever have questions about what to include on these tabs, contact us at the OCS registrar. So now we'll go through how to fill out this tab of the data collection tool. So the first column is the employee's name, or if you assign them a unique ID, you enter it here. This information will be kept internally. So any names or ID numbers do not need to be submitted to OCS. So if you don't have a unique ID number, you can use an employee's name, and just keep in mind that it's for your internal purposes. That doesn't need to be shared. The next column is where you'll use the drop-down menu to select the positions entered on the previous tab. So the list here will continue to auto-populate as you enter new positions in the Positions tab, and only one person can be employed in one position at a time. So that's why you want to use different positions like Sales Clerk A and Sales Clerk B for similar positions within one business. So if a new employee is filling a new position and not replacing someone else, you'll want to make sure there is a position for them and that you enter that position in the Positions tab. So this way you'll get credit for creating new positions and hiring a new individual. So based on the position you select in the drop-down box in column B, the third column will be auto-populated with the business associated with that position. So this is auto-populated and you won't be able to change it. It's all based on the information that you entered in the two previous tabs. So that's why it's important to make sure that all your information is accurate as you go along. The next two columns are the start and end date. And these are important because the PPR asks the question about how long an individual filled the position. So you'll want to make sure you enter the start date and the end date if that applies. The check boxes are for checking if the employee received some training with OCS funds, if they're a TANF recipient, if they qualify as low income, and if they receive a raise or promotion. So you'll want to leave them blank unless they all apply. Since the data collection tool is only collecting information for low-income individuals, that checkbox should always be checked. So column 9 is for documenting the starting hourly wage. And like I said, you should enter the starting wage, and this shouldn't change even if the person gets a raise, just because it's always going to want to know that starting wage for that position. For micro enterprises or like different self-employment, you might not have a firm calculation on the wage, so you should just leave it blank. However, you might have wage information if it's a 2 or more person micro enterprise and there's an employee. So you can keep that blank if you don't have a firm number. So all the employee-specific indicators, like we mentioned, are only asking about low-income individuals. So if you generated jobs for people who weren't low income, you'll want to save that information for Form B of the PPR where you can elaborate on that. So the fifth tab is asking some questions about leveraged funds. In the first column, you'll list the name of the organization or award name, and in the next column, you can select a source type from the drop-down menu. So your choices are government, private, loans, and other. And all loans, regardless of where they came from, should be recorded as loans. And in the final column, you can enter the amount. And you'll want to remember that each category is mutually exclusive, so you don't want things counting twice. The total amount will be automatically generated based on what you enter in these 4 categories. So if you didn't leverage any funds, that's okay. You can leave this tab blank. But if you did, you were going to be asked to enter by source how many funds were leveraged in the PPR. And so this will be an easy way to go back when you need to submit in April and copy and paste this information. The same goes for the next tab, which is calculating program income. You might not have program income, and that's okay. You can leave it blank. But if you do, you should enter it here. So, for example, you might have a stake in a company that you invested in, or a revolving loan that was successfully paid back. So in the first column, you'll enter the income source, and then in the second column, you'll enter the amount. And again, this information will be calculated for you. So once you go through and enter in all this information, it'll be summarized in tab 7. So this is the information that you need to fill out fill out Form A in the PPR. What you see here looks very similar to Form A within the online system, and the only difference is the data collection tool does not include that indicator that is related to non-low income positions like we've been mentioning throughout the presentation. So tab 7 will calculate based on the information that you made in the previous tabs. So the data collection tool will calculate the total number of new businesses created in indicator A01, but it also calculates the number of businesses of the total that you created were created at least 12 months ago. And this is why it's important to put the start and end dates of the businesses, because the data collection tool will help calculate all these indicators for you. So the first thing you need to do when you get to this tab is select the reporting period from the drop-down box. If you have filled out the previous tabs, the number in this tab will be updated, and you're ready to submit the forms in the online system. So you should enter the numbers you see here directly into the corresponding indicator in the online form. But keep in mind that just because you selected the reporting period on this tool and have gone through and entered in all the information, that doesn't mean that you have submitted your forms to OCS and that you have fulfilled your reporting requirement. If you use the data collection tool, you still need to copy the numbers that you see in this tab into the online system. So you'll see the drop-down menu on your screen for the reporting period, and it is very important that you select the correct reporting period dates in the drop-down box, because if you accidentally select an earlier reporting period and click the Finalize button, it'll, import the information into the incorrect reporting period, which can make it a little bit more confusing as you begin to report. And if it's your third or fourth time reporting using the data collection tool and you select an earlier reporting period, it will overwrite the information that you previously reported. So after you select your reporting period in Excel, there will be a warning message that says that you're about to overwrite something if you accidentally select a previous reporting period. So if you get that warning message, you can go back and fix the date, but it's just important that you pay extra attention in this step and make sure that you're selecting the correct reporting period. Once you did that, you can select the Finalize Your Records button, and that will update the data collection tool so you can keep reporting and collecting information for future reporting periods. We recommend that you don't select the Finalize Your Records button until after you submit your PPR and OLDC. This way, if you find that when you go to report the PPR and OLDC, you notice that maybe some of the data needs to be changed or updated, you can go back to the data collection tool and update it there as well. So now we'll talk about the non-low income indicator and how that relates to the data collection tool like we've mentioned a few times. Throughout this presentation, you should only include information on jobs created for and filled by low-income individuals in the data collection tool. So this is very important because every indicator except for one in Form A of the PPR asks you to collect data specifically about low-income individuals. The one indicator that is not specific to low-income individuals asks for the total number of positions created for low-income and non-low-income people. This indicator was added to the PPR starting in September 2014. It's indicator AOOJ in Form A of the online PPR. This indicator was added so that projects that were creating jobs for non-low-income people as well as low-income people could record that in the PPR so the program specialist could see kind of the overall progress of the grant. But because the data collection tool's purpose is to track only low-income job creation, the indicator is not included in the data collection tool. So the non-low-income indicator is not in the Excel file. So you'll have to keep track of the positions created for non-low income individuals in a different method outside the data collection tool. So this slide here kind of depicts the slight difference between the data collection tool, which does not include the indicator for non-low income people, and the PPR form in the online system, which does. So you'll see on your left, the data collection tool goes from indicator A04B to A05J, and the PPR form, which is you'll see on the right of your screen, does include that indicator. So that's like the one main difference between Form A and the data collection tool. So after you have selected the reporting period in the data collection tool and entered in your information in the online system, you will populate your records tab, which is tab 8 of the data collection tool. And again, you won't want to do this until you actually submit your report in OLDC, because you cannot edit any of the information on this tab. So you'll want to make sure that you have submitted your PPR and OLDC before you finalize your records. So what's important about this tab is it allows you to use the same Excel workbook continuously for reporting, from reporting period to reporting period over the life of your grant. So you'll just need to keep adding and updating information as you go, and you don't have to worry about keeping track of numbers that were previously calculated for, because it will all be documented for you. You might also find it useful for when you are writing the qualitative sections of your PPR, or if you have to kind of refer back to what you submitted in the previous reporting period. So now we'll go over kind of what you do once you've completed entering data into the data collection tool. So you can refer back to this information closer to April, and we will be providing more resources and some more webinars about how to actually submit your PPR in OLDC. But before you finalize your data and before you submit your report, the first thing that you want to do is check your total. So the data collection tool is very, very helpful, and it does calculations for you, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't review your records very closely and just make sure that the calculations that are pulling through in the data collection tool are correct. And you'll also want to make sure that you are finalizing your records in the data collection tool and saving it as much as possible. Because as you kind of add information, the tool will continue to calculate everything for you that you need for Form A. And as you continue using it for every reporting period, your data will always be there. So all you need to do is kind of select that correct reporting period. So saving is very important. And once you have finalized the data in the data collection tool, again, you'll log into OLDC and enter the information there. And we'll provide more guidance about how to do that in the future. So you'll want to save the Excel version of the data collection tool in a place that that is easily accessible, so you can kind of go back and add information as it comes up. So if new positions are created, you can enter them in the data collection tool to kind of keep track as you go, rather than having to, every April and October, kind of thinking about what's happened in the past 6 months. So now we're just going to reiterate, entering your data into the data collection tool is separate than submitting your PPR and OLDC. So the table on your screen outlines the key differences between the data collection tool and the PPR and OLDC. So basically, keep in mind that the data collection tool is optional, but it is very useful, so we suggest that you use it for gathering the data for Form A of the PPR. It's an Excel file that you'll use just for data collection purposes, but completing and finalizing the tool doesn't mean that you've fulfilled your reporting requirement. You still need to go into the online system and submit it. Using the data collection tool just makes data collection a lot easier. The PPR and OLDC is mandatory, and you submit the PPR through the online data collection system every April and October. And the biggest difference is that the data collection tool is only asking for information on low-income individuals, and the PPR is asking for information about low-income individuals as well in every single indicator except the one that we went over. And we'll go over that more in detail, the specific indicators, as we get closer to the first time that you'll be reporting. So we strongly encourage that you download the tool and begin using it now so that when you are ready to report in April, you have all of your data collected for you. And as we mentioned, the tool is available on the PPR Information Page, which is the URL you see on this slide here. And there's also a lot of additional resources related to the PPR and OLDC that you can refer to on that page. And if you ever have questions on using the data collection tool or submitting the PPR, you can email us at ocsregistrar@csi.com. So now we're going to open it up for questions. So you can either submit a written question via live meeting, or you can ask a question over the phone by pressing *1 on your phone. So if you have a question, get it in through writing or on the phone by pressing *1, and we will do our best to answer your questions. And if we don't get to your question because of time or if it requires a little more research, we will get back to you following the presentation. Before we start taking questions, though, I just wanted to mention that we do have several more sessions scheduled in this webinar series, so you'll want to mark your calendars for those. The next webinar is December 3rd about using grant solutions, and there's 2 more webinars coming up that you see in your slide here that you will want to attend to get some more information. And if you have any questions about registering for those, definitely let us know. So, operator, are there any questions on the phone line?
Not at this time, but as you stated, *1 for questions from the phone audience.
Okay. And we also got a question through the live meeting about if the data collection tool is available for download. And the data collection tool and the instructions are provided on the PPR Information Page. If you have trouble finding that, we will email a copy of the Excel document to all of the people that attended today's webinar that they can access the tool. We'll send that email out when we send out the email notification that the recording and the other materials are available for this webinar. So if for some reason you can't find it on the website, we will send it out to you. And you can always email us at OCS-Registrar, and we can always provide you with resources if you're not able to find them on the site.
And we actually do have a question from the phone lines.
Sure.
Caller, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Let's make Rachel sit down for us. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify, if we make a loan to an existing business, can the loan funds only be used to create a job?
So if you make a loan to a business, that business only counts if a job is created in that business.
What do you mean by that only counts? What does that mean?
So if you are, say you are, so you're providing a loan to a business, the business only counts, and by counts I mean in terms of the data collection for the PPR, it only counts as a business created with OCS funding if a position is created within that business and an employee is in that position.
Okay, so let me ask a follow-up question, which is, so we could possibly be in a position where we have goals. I can't remember the goals in the grant. It was clearly outlined. But let's say the total grant requires that we use 100 jobs. However, we could have, and let's say we fund 2 businesses. One business is an existing business and doesn't create any jobs. The second business is a new business and creates 100 jobs. We're still in compliance with the grant, correct?
Yes. One of the things that you want to do in those situations is, so say in your application you said we're going to create 50 jobs with this new business and we're going to create 50 jobs, 50 new jobs in an existing business. If once you start your grant, you notice that maybe things with the existing business aren't going to work out, so instead you're going to create all the jobs in the new business, that's fine. You just need to be in contact with your program specialist and your grants management specialist to indicate that your project strategy has changed.
Okay, got it.
Okay. And one of the things that you'll notice in the PPR is that there's a column that has, it's called your project target. So it'll be what you propose to do. So it might say that you propose to create one new business and expand an existing business. And then you will kind of, if the existing business doesn't work out, you'll enter 0 when you go to input how many businesses were expanded. But there is an explanation field that you can say, we changed our project strategy and worked with our program specialist, and now we're focusing on the one new business.
Hello, Whitney. This is Michelle Lovis calling, speaking, and I just wanted to get clarification on the question that was put forth again, because I think that there might be additional information to offer with respect to the creation of jobs as a requirement involving that expanded business, regarding that expanded business. So could I ask the question to be restated again, just so that I could hear it one more time? What was the question?
Sure. I'm not sure if the grantee. Okay, go ahead.
No, you go.
Are you sure? Okay. So basically the question was, if you propose to create, say, 100 jobs, and you plan to do this through creating a new business and expanding an existing business, but as things change, if you end up creating those 100 jobs through the new business rather than an expanded business, if you're still in compliance with the goals of the program?
Well, that I think I would defer on needing to see the application before I make a final determination on this, but at first blush, my comment would be any funds that are going forward to a grantee to create jobs, albeit new business creation or expanded business, those businesses must create jobs. So whether it be 100 jobs or 35 jobs under the new business creation mode, or whether it be 100 jobs or one job created under business expansion, the ultimate objective of the program is to create jobs. So with respect to the question again, no, that expanded business must create at least one job. I hope that helps. If you want to talk more after the conference, that's fine, but that's my spin on that. Okay? Did we get disconnected? I don't hear a voice.
No, we can hear you. So I think basically Michelle is saying in a lot of the cases it's going to be something you need to work on with your program specialist on, but they do understand that that things change in your project approach and your strategy might change as you go on. So as long as you're kind of in communication with your program specialist about it, you guys can work together to kind of figure out a solution. We have another, I know that we're a little bit over time, so if you do need to jump off the call and have further questions, you can email us and we'll be happy to answer them. But for folks that have a few more minutes, we can stay on the line and answer some more calls, some more questions. So the next question we received through the live meeting was, are non-low income jobs counted even if the OCS funds did not help to create those jobs? And the answer to that is no. For all jobs that are counted that are included in the PPR, they should all be CED created jobs. So if the project has a a few different funders and other funders are helping create jobs, those are not to be included in the PPR. It should only be CED created jobs. Operator, do we have any more questions over the phone?
There are no further phone questions at this time.
Okay, great. So with that, we'll kind of wrap up today's presentation. If you have another question, or if once you start kind of using the data collection tool or the PPR, something comes up, email us at ocsregistrar@icfi.com, and we'd be happy to answer those. And we'll be sending out an email when the recording and the materials from today's webinar are available, and we'll also be sending out the data collection tool. So again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to have you join on the other upcoming new grantee sessions that are coming in the next few months. Thanks, everyone.
And again, that does conclude today's conference. We thank you all for joining.